right? So, hi everyone. I'm Elena Kazakina. Actually, you know me. But some people whose names I see are new. So I'm a licensed psychologist in independent clinical practice in New Jersey, United States, not far from Princeton, but basically it's New York metropolitan area. So I greet you with my heartfelt hello. And, since it's a very I would say, special and intimate workshop, and we would be sharing our experiences, I would like to please ask people to be on camera. I don't want to inconvenience you guys, but if it's possible, would it please? Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I see the faces. Hooray! Yeah, and I recognize some of the faces. Yes, already. The topic of today's workshop is time scholars and clinicians, personal experience of time. Do we practice what we preach? New discoveries during the pandemic and beyond. And I have to say that I planned this workshop before pandemic, except I added this important piece of pandemic, which was impossible to ignore. But it's just for you to know that this topic was on my mind for a long time. And I realized in a way that my previous presentations in our time perspective community, starting with 2009 in Oslo and then Portugal and so on, it was always on the topic of crossroads of research and clinical practice. I tried to implement my own dissertation research is 1998 findings in my clinical work. And then it was sort of, that was the niche that is sort of meeting scholar and clinician. And today, actually, scholars and clinician professionals meet the personal. So it's like when the personal becomes professional. Is it possible? How it can be possible? I really think that it is. And that is one of my favorite books on time. Unfortunately, the late Dr. Levin, Robert Levin, whom we saw in Nantes, he turned his experiences of time, his discomforts in theory and research. So I myself, and that belongs to this group, I see Amandip, and if it's possible, can I see the face? Because we are on camera here. If it's possible. Yeah, thank you. So hello, hi. We share our faces and our personal experiences. So I wanted to say that I wanted to talk about our experiences during pandemic, comforts, discomforts, discoveries, but also anything that might have happened before. When you used your personal experiences for theory, Kurt Lewin, Hans Lowell, psychoanalytic psychologist, many actually, Minkowski, if we go way, way back, they used their experiences for theory. I myself, when I came to this country in 1990, as Frank said yesterday, it was the time when everyone explored optimism. And I was in a search to actually bring the past into the picture and to study all time orientations at once, because I didn't want past to be forgotten when everyone is investigated the future. And it was like how people who are optimistic, how they see the past in one sample. So basically, I was a proponent of the balance when the balance was not investigated. And I thought that really I'm on a mission to almost like save all three time orientations and to see whether positive functioning is possible in well-adjusted people. But what I discovered on this conference, and I sort of did my first introduction because there were so many discoveries during these 2 days. And I saw the name Anna Nevin Young. And I remember like her presentation was on reflection and actually tracking time. And there was another one, autobiographical lines. And today we heard about life designs. So I actually understood that in real life, I was pretty much present and future oriented back then. I didn't want to see my friends from St. Petersburg, Russia. I was only in the present, and I was extremely focused on doing my dissertation at Columbia University and so on. And now, as pandemic is over, I realized that suddenly I define myself as extremely future-oriented. And in my abstract, perhaps you saw that today we would probably be talking about temporal mismatch. Any observations we now on time perspectives differ from significant others' time experience and how it affects us and what we do with that. So I realized that I am thinking only about future now, as pandemic is not behind us, but as it is to some degree. And I'm thinking, what will happen next in my life? What else? And that is not like I want to travel or I want to go someplace. It's basically a lot about life in general. And I started to think, and I started to think what it could be about. Maybe because when I started teletherapy, I saw myself and I realized that I am older than I thought. And I'm in another stage of life. And remembering Erickson, generativity versus stagnation. And that's why my hunger for something else, for the future. Also, that is very much inconsistent with my husband's time perspective, because he has a realistic one and he was able to embrace the whole life cycle, I would say. When he asked me once, 15 years ago, how do you think, how many productive years we have? I said, what do you mean? It's forever. And he was upset with me. So we have always this like a little bit temporal mismatch. And sometimes it's really actually the only one mismatch that we have, but it can be pretty intense. So I read about life lessons from pandemic that helped me to sort of ease my worry about my sudden future orientation, like huge wave of it. And it said that life lessons from pandemic, that among 5 key lessons of how we may improve our lives after pandemic, among harnessing technology for health and work and socializing, picking important wellness habits, some good projects, do it yourself, different shopping patterns. I remember today's presentation about being more cyclical and being more oriented to seasons in our daily life. And so volunteering, so good things. There was so much loss and so much fear, but there were also these sort of good things that happened. And among of important one is we are reassessing our priorities. And what I read that it was a very big survey. It was published by American Psychological Associations, but actually conducted by Consumer Report magazine. So 35% of people in the survey said that we yearn to try something new. But what? Only time will tell whether that means starting a blog or a business, learning a new language, raising chickens, relocating, or an entirely different kind of pursuit. So I don't know. I even thought I wouldn't be doing any time psychology anymore. That's why I came to the hobbies session today to see what else in life is available. So I would like you to share your own stories, because basically, again, our goal today bring together personal and professional, and to see whether our personal can enrich our theory and whether we could actually use temporal concepts to live better, to navigate pandemic better, to deal better with our own crisis and so on. So I would very much encourage you to talk. And although we are recording our session, Antonis promised that it will be available almost only to us. So we'll see about that.
For all registered participants.
All registered participants.
Not available for public on YouTube to search and find, but only with the link for those who are registered for the conference.
Yes. So please, who wants to start sharing? Any observations about yourself, your experiences? Oh, I see Liz. Liz, I'm sorry, I pinpoint you, but I want to actually mention that during the beginning of pandemic, Time Communities started correspondence, and I remember that Liz and Frank Worrell and Bostian, they came up with wonderful recommendations. And I remember that Phil Zimbardo and I think Massimo from Venice, they also wrote a wonderful piece about the importance of policies and foresight and so on. So Liz, may I ask you, were you able to implement any of your insights in your own life during pandemic?
No, and I think this is a problem. Last year, we in Australia, we've been very fortunate. We have not seen the same level of cases of COVID. We've had lockdowns. We've currently got lockdown in Sydney, and it's but we're locked down and we're getting around 100 cases a day, and we see that as very concerning. So we're very different to a lot of other countries. They're still getting thousands of cases a day. But I don't know if anyone's seen our vaccine rollout is like among the worst in the world because but last year, I think, and for a lot of people working in universities, our workloads got quite heavy. And I must say that I worked ridiculous hours. For most of last year, I burnt out at the end of the year. And it's this stuff, I look at it all the time. I teach my kids. I convey it to my students. Do I do it myself? No. And I think there's a lot of us that fall into that same thing, is that we know what we need to do, but we're very bad. And like you were saying, Elena, it's I'm very future focused, and I've got my lists. There's always something else I've got to get done. I'm very bad at the present. My husband is very present. And that's one thing, when I first picked up the time paradox and read it, I went, oh my God, this makes sense. You know, now I get it, because my husband's always very much, oh, we'll deal with that when it comes to it. And I'm like, no, we've got to plan contingencies. And it really made so much sense to me personally. And I guess I even had a conversation with one of my children recently. He's 22, and he was saying that, you know, he feels that he's pretty present focused, but his partner, she's the future focused one. He said he thinks that works well. And I guess in some ways I found it does, because you need someone to be thinking about the future. You know, you need someone to be doing all the planning. But my husband brings me back into the present so that I can do things that are more nurturing and fun. But when my work takes over, which I think for a lot of us academics, it really does a lot. Yeah, so I convey this information to other people. I'm appallingly bad at putting it into my own life. Yeah.
You know, I appreciate your response, because in the beginning of a pandemic, my temporal lens, that's what I call temporal, doing psychotherapy through temporal lens, living through temporal lens, they were completely off. And, you know, I had trouble with my voice, trouble moving to teletherapy, online, doing therapy online. And actually, I had big trouble. It was also a very political year in the United States, as you all know. So it was very difficult to manage my own countertransference. I like my patients, but it was very difficult to actually understand them better, to see all layers of their life and how they came to certain views and so on. My first impulse was to diminish frequency of sessions, to make excuse. And I was very grateful to Anna when she asked me to do a time talk on webinar. And actually that was a legitimate reason for me to stop working. I took some days from my practice and actually think about what I do, what's happening. And I would say that theory can be really very healing. It was my discovery, but we need to make time for that. So thank you, Liz. So you know, I asked Antonis to kindly manage the chat, so I don't want to miss any hands if you use reaction, and if any, hello, hi. So if any hands are there.
Hi,
yes, hi.
yeah, one of the most interesting things that's happening now in America and other places, there are people who are publicly committed to not getting vaccinated. And they are creating a huge problem because the new Delta variant is affecting those people. And so it's really in America now the start of a second pandemic where it was really under control. But now for some reason, and I don't understand their psychology, you know, so it's, yeah, and it's something we should be thinking how to study, people who are publicly refusing to get vaccinated, knowing that, well, maybe they don't know, because all of the newest Delta variant is very spreading very quickly, and it's spreading quickly among people who have not been vaccinated. So I'm curious whether they have a different time perspective than people who choose to be vaccinated.
You know, if I may, I raise my hand, you know, because it's a huge question, and we may have some hypothesis, but you know, here I would actually bring your question to the personal experience, because we deal on daily basis with people, some of us, some of our family members extended, thank God, actually very extended, but some people do not want to vaccinate. How do we communicate with them? How we keep it together? And I think there are perhaps effective ways to convey the message, but basically today, I think that it is very important to actually jump into the experience of these people. And by the way, at the American Psychological Association, there would be a keynote presentation. Step out of your bubble, how to talk with people who have different views. I actually got this book right before our conference. And I think that the personal stress during pandemic was not only because of this fear to get COVID and watching the numbers, how many people are dying and huge errors in policies, but also this constant frustration during pandemic, how to not fall out from the relationships with people who, it turns out, some of my favorite patients with whom we are like so close in aesthetics, in some background, suddenly I see attitudes in politics very, very different. And I would say that that becomes stress, personal stress, that I hope to manage with perhaps some constructs of time perspective. And that is empathy, by the way, because empathy has this temporal dimension. It has, remember what you said on the first day, that one of your favorite pastimes was to watch a movie that is familiar to you, right? But to watch it from the, as you are a director of the film, that gave you double pleasure. So I think that being a participant observer and to see how mad you are at the person who doesn't want to vaccinate, but step back a little bit and allow this jump in the future, because the communication is future present. It's a little bit ahead of us. We talk something, hopefully, how it would resonate with another person. And so I think that this like stance, participant observer, I think it's helpful when we discuss things with people of opposite views. That's my take. I would like others to jump in, please.
I just want to add to that there was a presentation earlier on a study that I developed on addressing the how time perspective can predict willingness to vaccinate or not for COVID-19. And that's it's an area of study that I'm planning to pursue further. Also to try to assess, to develop health promotion campaigns that can help try to make a difference, to promote people to cooperate and vaccinate. So that's something I'm very interested in. And I actually have been working in that field for more than 10 years. I also have worked on willingness to vaccinate for H1N1. So it's a topic that I agree this needs more attention. I just wanted to briefly say that on an overview level. On a personal level, I wanted to mention that in what this presentation is about, which is about how do we practice what we study, time perspective, to our own lives. I just wanted to disclose that when the pandemic was about to start, I was teaching part-time courses. And when it all started, I was notified that the university said that they were gonna have a freeze on their funds and we're not gonna offer new courses to teach for a while. So I was gonna start the pandemic with no job. And I was in previous occasions of my life where I have gone through similar experiences, I've been depressed clinically to that level, because I had that experience in the past, and I know enough to know that if I allow myself to get depressed, it's not gonna get better. So what I did was I tripled my efforts in applying for jobs. Even though I knew it was gonna be harder to get jobs in the start of a pandemic than before, but I did that because if I dwell on the past, if I ruminate, oh my God, if the world ended, there's no more jobs, what am I gonna do? If I allow myself to dwell on present fatalistic, past negative, I'm gonna end up dead. I don't want that for myself. So I kept my hope high. I was able to get a job. And I recall a person telling me that in other moments of my life, I tend to be more present hedonistic. But during the job I had last summer, I was like mega workaholic. But I felt I was like, oh my God, this job, if something happens, I may not have any other job. So I was like, that's where the time period during which I developed the study I mentioned on vaccination and time perspective.
So you really picked yourself up from
Yeah.
that, and you did it yourself. That is like wonderful. I'm glad to see you here and to participate. And we have had different moments. We will be talking more about that. I see hands up, so I think I
think Olga was the first.
Olga. So should I, Olga? I unmute you. Please go ahead.
I could unmute myself. Thanks.
Okay, please go ahead.
Okay. Yes, we have these, some people with different political views, or sometimes health reasons, or sometimes something, they still have some probably reasons why they don't vaccinate. And it affects other people, more or less. But if they go out, if they don't go out, probably it doesn't affect so much. Okay, but also I live in New York, very close to the East River, which goes to the ocean. And everywhere there, now we have masks on the ground. So these people are responsible enough to wear masks, but they are not responsible enough to put it in the trash can. And I personally could pick up 1, 2, 3 masks, but I cannot pick up everything. You see? So, and this mask, if it does not go to the trash and to landfill, it goes to the ocean through the East River. It could kill a whale, a big whale. So you could read about it on BBC everywhere already, that one mask could kill a whale. Okay, so on one side we have that kind of people, on the other side we have that kind of people. So what is worse? If you kill the ocean, you affect the nature, you affect people as well, you affect everything. So how we can raise responsibility in people in this case or in this case with reasons of that kind of, without any reasons, just throwing trash everywhere. So it's more kind of general question probably, and which is worse, which is better, is probably everything is not so good. So what psychologists can do to raise responsibility of whole society, not just this person or that one?
Olga, this is a huge question. And I think that you seem to be really bothered deeply on the personal level by this situation. And you know, I know you from the conferences, and I know that some people who react to your questions, they really appreciate the huge temporal horizon and the huge, I would say, the spatial present that are reflected in your questions. Like, look at us, we have very unique, as I called before, therapy presence. It's not therapy, we have our workshop, but we talk about personal and professional. And Olga and Phil raise huge questions, right? Vaccinations, nature, how people behave. And I clearly see that it's deeply, deeply troubling. So, you know, allow me, Olga, it won't be, you pose the question. We deal with how we react on the personal level and how we turn societal into personal, into theoretical, and in research. But, you know, I actually want to pick up something good out of this distress. Because, you know, when I was a consultant in the long-term care facility, I would come in and I would ask, how are you, Mr. So-and-so? And he would tell me, oh, did you see what happened in Brazil? And you know what? For me, it was a good indication of his psychological health, because he was not confined to here and now, like participants of Phil's study years ago, or like sometimes people are, very narrow present. People have a large temporal horizon. And although the questions are distressing, but they are very important. I don't want to lose Bostian. Bostian, are you there? Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Yes,
yeah.
Please.
Oh,
Go ahead.
Well, I don't know which question to answer now.
Any, whatever you want.
Yeah. Well, I'll start with my impression of anti-vaxxers that we have in Slovenia, at least. I'm not sure that I would have a general prescription for all of them, because at least it's mainly Facebook and the sample that I have of my colleagues and friends and co-workers, but there are different reasons why not to vaccinate. One is more paranoid, I would say, that there is some conspiracy that we will all be dependent on the Bill Gates will, and he will manipulate us. And the other quite large, but not as large as conspiracy theorists, is that we are unsure what the vaccination will bring. Yes, it can bring protection, but I don't know what will happen in 2 or 5 years. I would prefer to wait for that period of time and see when the vaccination is tested enough. So I'm not sure that those two reasonings can be tackled the same way. So I think it's something that should be dealt with separately. As you were asking about personal experience, did I follow my instructions? To some extent, yes. I would say that I did structure days. I had luck that I had a lot of teachings last semester in the March, April, and May when we had the close down in Slovenia. So the structure was actually put forth by itself. So I had to prepare all the materials to go online. I took a week off just to do that. So I canceled all the lectures and then proceeded until the end of May. I really tried not to get anxious. I followed the news and was able not to get anxious about the news. And I think I took some healthy attitudes towards keeping my health and my sanity as well, because well, I have people that are dependent on me, so that was my priority. On the other hand, I lost some. I lost some contact with friends. I would not say I lost friends, but I lost some contacts with friends at the beginning of the pandemics because I had a lot to do at the job and with my kids. But later on, in September, October, I was able to start Zoom cafes with colleagues. So we were able to renew to start again our relationships, at least to extend that Zoom enables us to do so. I really didn't exercise last year. However, I know it's important. I ate a bit worse than usually, but I still think I eat healthy. So those would be my report about the following the incentives and following the suggestions that we have for people. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. But you really designed a study during pandemic. When I read your email, I was thinking how this person, I'm sure that there are some personal issues with masks, with food, with everything. And you were able to design and to conduct the study. That was very impressive. Thank you.
Yeah, I needed 2 months to start it really. So I hoped it would be faster.
I remember that, but I know that it was time when, as I said, it was almost paralyzing, and I relate to learning experience, and I'm sure that we would hear about others. Thank you. Very nice meeting you. I will give a microphone to Antonas, please.
I just want to say that there is a quite interesting comments in the chat. So probably the authors can tell because there is a discussion between Anna and Liz and Anna, the second or the first, about temporal habits and temporal needs.
Yes, Anna, could you or somebody, could you make it, because that was my request to please speak up because I can't manage the chat looking at your faces. So would you give a summary of your discoveries? Because I really appreciate your personal experiences. I wonder whether how time psychologists, time experts, whether we were able to look at things differently. And when we were actually, as Liz said, and learning that when it was really impossible, I know the experience. So Anna, would you be ready to comment on your correspondence in the chat?
Yeah, absolutely. So I come from a bit of a positive psychology background, and I look and work with clients on time habits quite a bit and time needs. And so I was definitely then doing a lot of reflection of my own throughout the pandemic regarding when can I catch myself in a time habit, for example, working long hours or working at a specific pace or feeling like I needed to be keeping up at a certain rate. And so when was I falling into a time habit that was maybe no longer fitting what my time need was in the moment because my circumstances had changed in some way, shape, or form with the pandemic. And so really noticing, I think, how I had to catch myself in those time habits and really then reflect and evaluate in what's serving me and what's no longer serving me. And I think using that pause and reflect helped me to then kind of figure out and in some cases reestablish working habits and general time habits that helped me to, and of course, not perfect and still kind of shaping and reshaping, but definitely helped me to consider again, just that question of what's actually serving me right now in these circumstances.
That's great. So actually, that's what I meant, whether we practice what we preach. And, you know, thank you. I'm very glad to meet you. And I hope we would be seeing each other at the conference and we discuss further this method. And it's very, very interesting. I also see Katerina here among participants. And, you know, I'm thinking now about our pandemic experience. And Katerina, your research was on military, on the experience of war before and after the war, right? Do I remember correctly? And you know, in Phil's keynote, there was this suggestion to look back and to see how we did it, to review, to put down our thoughts and commitments and impressions. And you know what was my reaction? I actually didn't want to look back at all. I really didn't want to look back like month by month because they were like pretty bad. And that's why it's sort of good to start something new now. And I also think that's why people remember the war and the plagues and the pandemics later, not right away. I'm just curious what will happen in society, whether there would be movies and stories right away about pandemic, whether this metacognition, temporal metacognition, would be turned to this very traumatic experience, or in because you know, when Phil asked like do this review, I can do it intentionally, but not with my volunteer spontaneous desire to look back. Katerina asked her participants to look at their war experience before and after. I don't know whether they would be like talking about that spontaneously. So that's why it's just interesting to see what will happen next. Thank you, Anna. Any other discoveries in your personal life during pandemic and beyond? Yes, Oksana.
Hello, everyone. Good evening, good morning. I don't know. So I want to share a short story how time perspective actually saved and saves my friendship, because I have a friend with whom, her name is Olenka, and with whom we share a lot of common values and interests, but we have really different future time perspective. I plan at least 2 weeks ahead and even more, and she plans 2 to 5 hours ahead. You know, when I ask her, for example, in the middle of December, let's celebrate New Year together, she can't answer me anything because she knows where she will be on New Year Eve only on the 31st of December in the afternoon, you know, and then she decides where she is going to celebrate. And often, but because we share a lot of common interests, often there is such a situation, for example, when she calls me and says, you know, such an interesting exhibition opens just in 2 hours, come and see. And I tell, oh, I cannot because I have planned, meetings in 2 hours and I'm not able to come. But then for example, I find some interesting event and I call her and tell, you know, in 2 weeks, there will be a new exhibition in our city. And she tells, wow, I don't know where I will be in 2 weeks. And if I didn't know this theory of time perspective, I would think that she does not love me or does not respect me, you know, like a person, like a friend. And actually, some of our common friends, they were they were kind of had bad feelings because Olenka often, you know, cannot respond to will she be attending a birthday party or not, or something like that. And I often try to explain people, so, well, it's not because she doesn't respect you or doesn't love you. She finally, in most cases she comes, and 99% that she will come, but she just can't, answer at the moment. There was even once a situation when we visited together Paris with her and our friends, and there was also her mother, and we were attending one social event, and her mother told us, I will go faster back to Ukraine because we have bus faster, so maybe you can come out in half an hour and tell me just goodbye, have a safe trip and so on. And she told, well, I don't know if everything will be all right, maybe. And I just stood there and said, well, what will happen in half an hour? I don't know, earthquake, what? Well, we are in the middle of social event. What will happen? You cannot come out and say goodbye to your mom.
Yeah, Oksana, I can relate to your friend. It's very interesting because, getting back to what we were talking about, like my obsession with future now, future has ultimate possibilities. And when we are told that we have like this scheduled, that's why, I know that our time is running out, but I really thought that perhaps as time psychologists, time experts, maybe we would step out of therapy room, research lab, and do things outside. Even psychoanalysts now talk that they would be relate to the climate change, to bigger social issues. And you know what, I'm talking about like things like even vacation. Some people plan everything, some people leave the door open, and that creates this sense of excitement, of unknown. And the uncertainty of pandemic was scary and frightening because nobody knew whether vaccines will come and how many people die, and it was terrible. But I would say now the healthy portion of unknown, actually it's very important in life and relationship. And if I have a minute, I also wanted to say that I had a interesting discovery during pandemic, the meaning of novelty. And today, our keynote presenter, Professor Flaherty, he mentioned time work in prison and the role of novelty. I would say that my mood was saved, not by positive past that I actually had during pandemic, and I met my friends online, I mastered online work, but I made a new friend suddenly, and I couldn't understand why I'm so excited. I don't know this person. And I went there only because, and that's how past and present and future blends, because she wrote on she has a farm and she donated flowers to the hospital, but some were left for some customers. But she wrote about lily of valley, that's the flower of my childhood. And when I read about that, I said, I'm coming. I'm going to buy these flowers. And I felt it's such a blending of past, present, and future. So that's my sort of message for those who would be doing research when it's a novel experience. And, Aristotle wrote about time as change, and Jean-Marie Guillot wrote about mental representations reflecting change. So we have to create change. That's time work. So I think that would be my words for today. And I don't know, Antonis, do we have any minutes left? Any other hands, any messages?
Like 2, 3, 4 minutes maximum.
If I may, I would like to bring back the concept of time competence, because remember, we were talking yesterday, I think Frank made this, he actually looked at how time perspective developed and what age we are in. And he mentioned Thomas Kotel's tests, famous circles, or that they had second life now. And I actually, like 2 or 3 years ago, no, before 4 years ago, I thought of inviting him to our conference. And he is not in the time area. He wrote many other books. He is a professor, but his legacy is alive and well. But the point is that there are certain concepts, and Abraham Maslow came up with the concept of self-actualizing personality. And one of the key features of self-actualization was time competence. I use this scale in my study and actually in my dissertation as time continuity scale. But basically now time competence, and we are time experts, it can enhance balanced time perspective, flexibility of time perspective, managing time, managing our biological clock. So some temporal phenomena which could be actually combined. And as sort of time experts, I hope that we would be reflecting on our own personal experience, bringing personal into professional, and professional to help us, as we heard today, to manage our life and to cope with life challenges better. So I thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much, Elena. I just got an idea, and I don't know, maybe we can have some technical support, maybe from Antanas, from your university. But I think maybe we could run again like a similar workshop, like where we share our personal experiences in terms of like how does the theory matches like our experienced world, or how it helps us in different ways of our work. And maybe, I don't know, to do it, I don't know, once in 2 months or once in 3 months or something like this, but kind of like to kind of like this check-in, check-out.
I would love that. If any people would like to have like this, I would say self-study group. And, you know, let's not undervalue the importance of self-reflection and self-examination. From the beginning of psychology, like Wundt, William James, Sigmund Freud, that was the method. And I think that sometimes we don't use it enough. And I believe that to actually, let's call us time experts, but we need to, by the way, there is the 5th edition of the book, Helping Profession. And self-examination and self-awareness is one of the key cornerstones of helping profession. But in research, what is research? Is me search. We need to know what we study, why we study that. I was wondering why Professor Flaherty studied prisoners' experience. What is the STEM? There was somebody who studied time and nature and experience of trees. How come this comes together? So I'm volunteering to do this on a regular basis with a group of people who want to do it. We can process life as time psychologists.
I think it's a great idea, and we should definitely do this. But yeah. So thank you very much for this wonderful workshop.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you for
you,
coming.
Elena.
Thank you.
Thank you all, and we will meet in like 6 minutes in next next question and answer session. So
Yes.
see you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
You, bye.